So let's get back to the Machzor. So of course, I took a look at my notes last year, and I know we focused really on the beginning of the Amida. We discussed a little bit Zachreinu L'chaim and Mika Mocha, the additions, the 4 additions, which are later day addition. And then we got started on I'll come back to that in one moment, and we'll pick up. I'll do like a brief summary, and then we'll pick up. But before we do that, I just want to spend a few minutes. I don't think I've discussed it here. If I have, please let me know. But I just wanted to, for a few minutes, discuss what Rosh Hashanah is all about. We daven a lot on Rosh Hashanah. Why is Rosh Hashanah a holiday? They ask the average person right on the street. I do this in chat too. Why? Okay, what happened on Pesach? Everybody knows. What happened on Shavuos? We all think we know, right?
It's the birthday of the world.
Right, it's the creation of the world, right? Everybody knows that. Right. So let's go straight to the video. Let's go straight to the video and see the problem with that interpretation. Okay, so we're in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, Tractate Rosh Hashanah, which, by the way, this we did mention. Where Tractate Rosh Hashanah spends half of the time talking about Rosh Chodesh, but we'll maybe come back to that. So here we go. We're on page 10b. Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer, Omer, B'Tishrei Nivra Olam. The world was created in Tishrei. B'Tishrei Noldu Ha'avot. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were born in Tishrei, which is funny because didn't Sarah, Rivka, and Rachel get pregnant on Rosh Hashanah, so they had premature babies. Okay, right, because from Rosh Hashanah to Pesach. But Tishrei Metu Avot, they died in Tishrei. It's a very, we have to follow again our Rambam view. These things are not to be understood literally. But Pesach Nolat Yitzchak. But Rosh Hashanah Nifkeda Sar Rachel v'Chana, right? So even though they got pregnant, Sar Rachel and Chana, actually, not Rivka. Interesting.
No. Thank you.
Right? Oh. I can't mute you now because I'm on the share. So if you can please just mute yourself. Actually, I'm noticing now this for the first time ever. It says on Rosh Hashanah, Sarah, Rachel, and Chana became pregnant. What about Rivka? So maybe we'll have to put that aside. I really don't know when the Rivka become pregnant. For Rosh Hashanah, Yatsa Yosef mi Beit Hasurim. Yosef got let out of jail. So it's interesting. You have to figure what it means. Okay, so this is fine. The world was created in Tishrei, and that's very nice. For Rosh Hashanah, this is a little strange one. For Rosh Hashanah, Batla Avotenu Mitzrayim, they stopped working. The slavery in Egypt ended on Rosh Hashanah. But B'Nisan Nikalu, the Jews were, well, that we know, they were taken out of Egypt in Nisan, but the future redemption will come in Tishrei. The Mashiach's going to come in Tishrei. That's very nice. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, B'Nisan Nivra Olam. Rabbi Yeshua disagrees. The world, this is the same Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer who argued on Tanur Shalachna, Torah Lav Shemaim. They argued a lot. Rabbi Yeshua says, V'Nisan Nivra Olam. The world was created in Nisan. V'Nisan Noldu Avot. And Avot were born in Nisan. V'Nisan Meitu Avot. V'Pesach Nolat Yitzchak. Rosh Hashanah Nifkeda. They also agree. They both agree they had short pregnancies. Rosh Hashanah Nifkeda Sar Rachel V'Chana. And they were pregnant on Rosh Hashanah, but they gave birth on Pesach. For Rosh Hashanah, which is presumably in Nisan, right? Yatsami Beit Asurin, Joseph left jail. Rosh Hashanah Bat Lavadam Avotenu, they stopped working. They agree. But Nisan Nigalu, we were redeemed in Nisan. Oh, but Nisan Atidi Nigal. So there's a disagreement. Will the redemption come in Nisan or in Tishrei? But the major disagreement is when was the world created? In Nisan or Tishrei? That's very nice. So why does Rabbi Yeshua celebrate Rosh Hashanah? I get it. Rabbi Eliezer celebrates Rosh Hashanah because it's creation of the world. I don't know. Somehow I don't feel the Torah was only written according to Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yeshua also is part of the Torah. And in Rabbi Yeshua's Torah, it also says to celebrate, it's not called Rosh Hashanah, to celebrate the first day of the seventh month. Why? Clearly, it's not the creation of the world. So why do we celebrate Rosh Hashanah? That's an interesting...
Coronation of the king?
Okay, where does that come from? That's what we do today. Right. See, of course, obviously in our Machzor, we say Hayom Harad Olam. Today's the creation of the world. And we do all these things. But I just want to go back where does this come from? It's not as simple as we think. It's not a
It's
simple thing.
Malchuyot. It's Malchuyot. We say Malchuyot.
Right. I know we do Malchuyot, but where is that in the Torah? Where does that come from? That's my question. So I'm going to go with another question, a very similar question.
Rabbi Kelman?
That
Wasn't
was I'm sorry.
Just
Right.
wasn't
No,
the world
I'm
created? I'm sorry, but
sorry?
to build on what Debbie said, wasn't the world created in Elul and man created on Rosh Hashanah?
Okay, that's irrelevant.
then-
I mean, yeah, we
And it's
assume
really the
Gemara
judgment of
Olam.
man.
This Gemara doesn't say it. The Gemara we just saw says the world was created in Tishrei or Nisan. So presumably they hold day one of creation. I don't know. The other Midrashim assume that man was created on Rosh Hashanah and the world was created on the 25th of Elul. But that really leads to my next point. This doesn't make any sense. Please. Let's be honest. This doesn't make any. The world was created in Elul, and there's no Elul, there's no Tishrei, there's no Nisan. It's a ridiculous argument. How do we resolve the argument? Was anybody around? They're arguing a factual, like it's a scientific argument on something that's impossible to. But there was no Nisan. The idea of a Nisan starts in when the Jews leave Egypt. What do you mean? But Nisan, the world was created. There was no like time. What do you mean? It's Nisan. Okay, in the spring, I don't know. It's all you don't get that impression. The world was created in the spring or the fall.
So it has to do with universal or particular.
There you go. Now, meaning right. So explain.
It has to do with our place as opposed to the world. Are we looking at it in terms of universal, that God is the God of the whole world, and therefore we're looking from the vantage point of our Hashem being, like we say in Aleinu, that he's Melech HaOlam,
Okay,
or
Melech
will
HaKol
be.
Haaretz, which we say in Malchut, Melech HaKol Haaretz Mekadesh
Right,
Yisrael.
right. Or is it our relationship as Jews that is
Okay,
tantamount?
excellent. So, right, great. So I would say, right, I say slightly different, but fantastic. The question is what's the role of the Jew? Are we first and foremost human beings, part of the world? And then we have additional responsibilities as Jews, or is our primary concern to let the Goyim worry about climate control and all these other things? We got enough problems. There's 8 billion other people. We're 13 million people. We don't have time to worry about that. Or is our primary role as Jews, or is our primary role as human beings? Now, of course, both are true. And then Reb Soloveitchik developed this at great length, and that's his beautiful idea that when Avram wants to buy Marat HaMachpelah, he says, Ger v'toshav anochi imachem. So Rashi has this like funny explanation. I'm a stranger and a resident. Well, that's an oxymoron. So Rashi says, okay, I'm a stranger, but if you give me problems, you should know I'm going to be a resident here one day. So like, get out of here. But there's a contradiction between Ger and Tosha, which Rashi acknowledges.
That's the
He says
tension.
that's the role of the Jew. The Jew is a Ger and a Tosha. Yeah, so that's the debate. When the Sayyish debate was we're created in Nisan or Tishrei. It's a ridiculous debate if you interpret it literally. Though that's the debate is: are we Nisan or are we Tishrei? Nisan is Jewish history; it's Yetziat Mitzrayim, and Tishrei is world history. Nisan is the moon; Tishrei is the sun. The sun is nature, is the constancy of nature, never changes. The moon's the ups and downs of life. That's why the Jewish people are compared to the moon. So that's the debate. They're not arguing like 14, well, I don't know, 5,007, okay, 14 billion years ago was the world created in April or September. Like, that's not their argument, Anyways, so the question is, so what are we celebrating Rosh Hashanah? So our Machzor picks up by Yom HaRosh. I have mentioned this once before. We're not consistent, though. We do another mitzvah that follows the view that the world was created in Nisan. Anybody know what mitzvah do we, on Rosh Hashanah, we pretend the world was created in Tishrei, but on Nisan, we also pretend the world was created in Nisan. What mitzvah do we do? It's less common, it's not so famous. Yeah, there you go, Birchas Hachama. Every 28 years, I don't remember when is the next one coming up. When's the next Birchas Hachama? There'll be 900 books written, 4,000 pages, how to do Birchas Hachama.
It should be not that far because the last one was a while ago.
Yeah, I don't remember.
doing
28 years, I don't remember what year we're in. Okay, so every 28 years, which is also scientifically incorrect, of course. We assume that the sun is in the original place of creation because it's 365 and a quarter days. So it moves every year 1/4. So to do a whole week, to be in the same place on the same day, to get to Wednesday, the fourth day, at the same time, it's got to be 28 years, 7 times 4. So every 28 years. Now, that should be March 21st. We do it April 4th because, of course, we all know that the Jewish calendar
That's
works.
the Julian Gregorian
Right.
calendar.
The Jewish calendar halachically works as a Julian calendar, but we all use a Gregorian calendar. 1582, Pope Gregory changes the calendar to update it to make it scientifically correct. Our calendar is slightly off, and we've discussed this in the past. It's one day will be a problem, and I don't know what's going to happen because I can't see the rabbis ever coming together to agree to adjust the calendar. But pretty soon, a few hundred years, already Pesach is getting very, very late. Already,
I just looked it up. It's April 8th, 2037.
That's not so close. So we're halfway. We're mamish halfway. 13 years. I mean, not, that's got in years Hashem, we should all live and be well. In 13 years, we can read this 700-page book that somebody's going to write on Birchas Chama. I say that, with that's Chaim Soloveitchik's, in Chaim Soloveitchik's famous, fantastic article on rupture and reconstruction. So he comments, we've gone from a mimetic tradition where we learn from our parents, what you do. Everything has to be written down, text. So he says there's I think the example he gives, there's a 600-page book on Sfiras Omer. He said there's 2 lines in the Shulchan Aruch on Sfiras Omer. You don't need a 600-page book for Sfiras Omer. So, so they write Birchas Chama once in 28 years. So they're going to write a 900-page book on what to do and, whatever. Okay, anyways. And I probably 56 years ago, I'm assuming almost whoever heard of the bracha. Did anybody actually say the bracha 56? Probably like Daf Yomi, 9.5 people said the bracha. And then in the 80s, now it's a big deal, Okay, anyways. So, but let's get back to our serious question. So really, especially according to Rabbi Yeshua, what in the world is Rosh Hashanah all about? So, the simple reason, and this I heard from David Silver, head of Drisha, is that Rosh Hashanah is the sanctity of the 7th month. We know every 7th day, of course, is Shabbat. Every 7th year is Shemitah. After 7 years of 7 years, we have a Yovel, but we don't have anything. What's the 7th month? So the 7th month has to be holy. So the reason what Rosh Hashanah is, it's the first day of the 7th month, and that's why he explains half of Masechet Rosh Hashanah is the laws of Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Hashanah is because it's Rosh Chodesh. In other words, what is Rosh Chodesh? If you learn Masechet Rosh Hashanah, more than half of it is on Rosh Hashanah. Nothing with Rosh Hashanah. But no, what Rosh Hashanah is Rosh Chodesh of the 7th month, even though in our davening we never mention Rosh Chodesh. We'll get there maybe. We don't, but so Rosh Hashanah is the sanctity of the 7th month. It's the month that we're going to have Yom Kippur. Wow, the day we get closest to God, and Sukkot, which is Chag, right? Sukkot. We often think that Pesach is the primary holiday. It's Sukkot, which is the primary holiday, which is why in rabbinic literature, the term Chag, holiday, is Sukkot. Sukkot is the primary holiday. It's the conclusion of the holidays. It's all day with the most simcha, etc. So Tishrei is the month that we have Yom Kippur and Sukkot, and then Shmini Atzeret, we add in an extra day. So that's what we're showing. And why do we blow horns, blow a shofar? The word shofar doesn't appear here. It appears only by Yovel. The word shofar in the Torah only appears by Yovel. So we realize there has to be a connection between Rosh Hashanah and Yovel. But the idea is, why do you blow a horn? Why do you blow trumpets? Before the king arrives, they
coronation.
So that's exactly, the shofar is announcing the king. That's how we get into Malchiyot, right? 7 is the number where we identify God as the creator of the world and the master creator. So we do that on the 7th month. So that's how Rosh Hashanah becomes Malchiyot, and that's how Rosh Hashanah becomes all these things. Whether it's actually the creation of the world is kind of like irrelevant, and it's not a physical idea. We do, but our Machzor, we of course, as I said, we assume on Rosh Hashanah the world was created on in 20,038. We'll assume the world was created in Nisan. Okay, Baruch Hashem, that's the Jewish way. We do Shnei Tuvim Hamachshim Zed, two things that contradict each other. That's fine, no problem. But because Tishrei represents the creation of the world, or this debate between, Rabbi when was the world created, Nisan or Tishrei, whether we're Jews first or we're really humans first, and then we add on our gene, which is, I think, the approach. Is what we do. We do assume basically the world was created in Tishrei. We do assume we're humans first, and we do. Avram only comes in generation 20. God doesn't create Jews, he creates Av. So I think we really do assume like this, that we're really human beings first, and then we have to add on to our humanity. We have the extra responsibilities as a Jew, and that's why the Rosh Hashanah Machzor in Zichronot, we start with Noah, right? That God remembers Noah and the flood. And as we mentioned many times, God is the judge, Kol Ba'ei Olam, he judges for the entire world, Melech al Kol Haaretz, the Aleinu. Where does Malchut begin? Malchut doesn't really begin at Aleinu. I think Malchut, technically begins Al Kain Nekava L'cha Hashem Elokeinu, the second paragraph of Aleinu, the universal paragraph of Aleinu. The first paragraph of Aleinu is the particularistic aspect, right? The Aleinu l'shabeach shehem mishtachavim lehevel v'rig. There, the goyim are like that. V'anachnu, we Jews, korim mishtachavim v'melech malchem lachim. And then we have the universal Al Kain Nekava, but the Malchiot of Rabbi Akiva begins with Al Kain Nekava. We do, if you notice, there's a break. I have to look now in the Machzor to remember exactly. There's a break between the Aleinu and the Al Kain Nekava. We don't say it back to back. Okay, that's just a little bit of I think, an important introduction. Why Rosh Hashanah is. I will add one other sort of. I thought of this question this week. I never thought of it before. That's why I always love to teach. Thank you. Why is Rosh Hashanah Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim? Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, I understand why there's Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. Shabbos, I understand why it's Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. We say in Kiddush because the slave doesn't know from Shabbos. Everything's the same. But what's the connection? We say at Kiddush, and we're going to say that Rosh Hashanah is Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. Why? So I don't know that I have a great answer to this question. I mean, and I only saw one of the commentaries that I looked at. And then obviously there are many more I didn't look at, but I only saw one commentary address this issue. Why on Rosh Hashanah do we say Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim?
Maybe that's how Hashem became king of the world, because everybody saw his might.
So that's kind of, I think it's the Otzer Tefillot Siddur mentioned, well, all our mitzvot, God took us out of Egypt so we could do mitzvot. The answer is not great, because basically what he's saying is every mitzvah in the Torah is Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim, but we don't really assume like that. We assume the mezuzah maybe like we Pidyon Aben, we have all kinds of mitzvot, but I don't know to say that every mitzvah is Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. So, but that's what they say. The mitzvot come from Yetziat Mitzrayim. So you see, I don't know. But you notice in the piece of Gemara that I showed you, it said that on Rosh Hashanah, the slavery
stopped working.
So maybe they're dealing with that issue. But I find that, I don't know what it means to slavery stopped Rosh Hashanah. There was no Rosh Hashanah in Egypt. Who are we kidding? But again, it's all symbolic. But it's the idea that somehow Rosh Hashanah was no, but I don't, like I say, I don't have a great answer to this question. I'm throwing it out there if anybody has. Rosh Hashanah is not really Zecher. It's Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim in the broader sense. Yes, all mitzvot. But
that perhaps the lessening of the slavery began around that time.
Right. So the other thing you could say is the first
mitzvah. Maybe we wouldn't be able to do any of the mitzvot.
Right. So then every mitzvah is actually Mitzrayim, but we don't really say that. You're correct. That was my point. We don't. So on a certain level, yeah, but we don't. When we say Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim, they're usually meaning there's a deeper connection. So it could be. Morris, you want to say something?
I was just going to say, like the first Rashi talks about the first national mitzvah as a Chodesh Zelachem.
Excellent. So that's
Rosh Hashanah is obviously connected to a Chodesh. So
okay, very good. So that's the only thing I was thinking along those lines. That the beginning of the Exodus story starts. Redemption begins HaChodesh Azelech and Rosh Chodeshim, which of course is Nisan. We already get, but Nisan Nigalu, but Nisan Atidim Nigal, whatever. So it could be the idea of the calendar and setting up and that somehow, but I just throw that out. I find that a little bit interesting. Okay. Okay, let's get to the Machzor itself a little bit. So I believe I did mention this. I don't know if I mentioned this last year or 2 years ago, I believe, that so last year we started, really, we just briefly went through Zachreinu L'chaim in the beginning, then we started with the Shmon Esrei. After Kedusha, Ata Kadosh, Shimcha Kadosh, Yoshim Mekol Yom Yilukasela, and then all of a sudden we've got 4 paragraphs. Ubechein Tein Pachtecha Shem Elokeinu Al Kol Maasecha. God, you should instill your fear. And we discussed last year Pachad, and your Pachad is the Yira means awe. We have to have Yira of God and Yira of our parents. Ishimo, it doesn't mean to be afraid. You're not supposed to be afraid of your parents. There's being awe of your parents. And even the mitzvah of Yirat Hashem doesn't really mean to be afraid of God. It means to be in awe of God. Fear, you can't have a good relationship. When you're afraid of somebody, there's already a problem in the relationship. In a loving relationship, we have to love God. Can't have fear. Even awe is hard in a loving relationship. But Rav Soloveitchik is saying, Pachad, that's fear. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Adin, Pachad. Trembling, ema, fear. Okay. Anyways, and then ubechein ten kavod, ubechein tzadikim v'timloch. So we have 4 paragraphs that we say in all the tefillot of Rosh Hashanah, and we mentioned the commentaries point out ubechein ten pachtecha. So that's what the ubechein. Where does that come from? Anybody remember? I don't expect anybody to remember, but you get 10 bonus points if you remember. Where does ubechein come
Book
from?
of Esther. Book of Esther.
Excellent. Ubechein avo el hamelech. That's what all the commentaries say. This is a play. It's such a beautiful idea because Esther is nervous, like, I'm going to die. Like she's not going to do it. Mordechai has to twist her arm, and she's going to go and do it. And if I get lost and get killed, that's it. We're finished. No, that's how we come, slowly, with trepidation, with fear. That's ubechein. Now, what's this doing here? So this is a famous line. I believe the Rav quoted it in the name of his uncle, the Avodat HaMelech, I think was his name. He was unfortunately killed in the Holocaust. This was, I believe, his mother's sister's husband, Karakovsky, I think something was the name. I don't remember exactly. And he was a Gaon Olam, but nobody knows of him. He was killed young in the Holocaust, and many of his manuscripts were lost. But he wrote a commentary on the Rambam, and I think this is where, if I'm not mistaken, where the Rav Soloveitchik is quoting this from, that he has a very interesting, powerful idea that there's actually a debate in the Talmud what we say for Malchut. In the Mishnah, it doesn't really spell it out, but the Mishnah describes when do we say Malchut on Rosh Hashanah? This is the famous idea of the Rav. Why are there 9 tefillot? Why are there 9 brachot in the Shmon Esrei of Rosh Hashanah?
9 times something with Chana and her tefillah.
Chana invoked God's names 9 times. So that's the Haftorah, the first day of Rosh Hashanah. We saw B'Chana Nifgada, Rosh Hashanah, Chana got pregnant. Chana's praying. So, and Chana is the model of prayer, which of course is a beautiful idea. It means, people think women have to pray less than men. I don't know where this comes from, but all the halachas of prayer are derived from Chana. And we copy on Rosh Hashanah 9 tefillot, because she invoked God's name 9 times. So we have 6 brachot. We have the first 3, the last 3, and Malchut, Zichronot, and Shofar. But there's a problem. We have a 10th bracha, Kedushan Hayom, the sanctity of the day. And every Yontif, we always have that middle bracha. So we also need to say this. So we do that on Rosh Hashanah. So we really should have 10 brachot. But Rav Soloveitchik, in a sort of very small C conservative style, explains that we're not allowed to introduce new tefillot, or what right is, like the Rambam we talk about all the time, what right do we have to approach God? And so we need a biblical precedent to be able to approach God. So we only have a biblical precedent to approach God with 9 tefillot. And that's why 18 is from Mizmor LeDavid, 18 times is Havu, Hashem, and then they have wars the 19th time. They always find a biblical precedent. We've spoken many times. That's why the Abu Draham and others always explain phrases from the Siddur taken from different biblical texts in Tanakh. So Rav Soloveitchik says we must have 9 brachot, which we do. The rabbis in the Mishnah argue what to combine. So Rav says, why do they combine them? Just make a 10th bracha. No, you can't make a 10th bracha. So we follow Rabbi Akiva, and we put Malchiot with Kedushat Hashem. That's why it's a long bracha, right? Melech kol haaretz, that's Malchiot. Mekadesh Yisrael v'yom hazikaron. That's the Birkat. That's like Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim, right? So we combine the two, and we say Bakartanu v'titein lanu, right? We do all that stuff we do on the regular Yontif, and then we throw in Malchiot. Rav Yochanan ben Nuri says no, you do Malchiot in the 3rd bracha, which makes a lot of sense because the 3rd bracha we're moving from Ha'el HaKadosh to HaMelech HaKadosh. So that's a pretty good place to put in Malchiot. So Rav Yochanan ben Nuri is of the opinion that Malchiot is with the 3rd bracha of the Shemona Esrei, and that's what we do. Well, that's what this is. That's how the Rav Soloveitchik quoted his uncle is saying. He's saying that even though we follow Rabbi Akiva, but we this Ubechein Tein Pachta is a remnant. That's how he explains it. It is a remnant from the Malchut of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. That so we say this idea of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri here. That was his Malchut. His Malchut, and when we add the Malchut, even though in practice, when we actually daven Malchut, Zikron and so forth, we follow. I mean, we throw this in too, but we're doing the Malchut of Rabbi Akiva. And if you remember, all 3 Malchut, Zikron, and Shofar have an introduction, setting forth the theme of what we're going to do, and then we quote 10 verses. So here we don't quote the 10 verses; it's just introducing the theme of Malchiot. So that's what he explains. What this is, that this these 4 paragraphs are part of Malchiot. So what's it doing at Shachrit, Mincha, Mariv? We only say Malchiot on Rosh Hashana. I mean, Rosh Hashana at Musaf. So I don't know. So okay, that question doesn't really bother me, as the Rav would say. That's okay, big deal. Like if we wanted to preserve a remnant, but I think I don't think you need to say this, but it works very well if you say this. So the Baal HaMaor, Rav Zerachia Halevi, 12th century, the Chavrusa of the Ravid, the Ravid who argues on the Rambam, his Chavrusa, but the Baal HaMaor, many, I think people have to study the biographies of some of our great rabbis. He's a colorful person. Yisrael Tashma wrote a whole biography on the Baal, I mean an academic biography. That's when I say biography, like, okay, understand what I mean. So the Baal HaMaor was one of the fascinating characters of Jewish history. As we always quote, whenever we quote him, Rav Soloveitchik was astounded by this. He never wore tzitzis. The Baal HaMaor didn't wear a tallis. Before he got married, after he got married, he never wore a tallis. Why did he not wear a tallis? Because it didn't have any tchelet. And it says you have to have tchelet. So, you don't have to wear a 4-corner garment. You don't have to wear tzitzis if you have a 4-corner garment. If you don't wear a 4-corner garment, you never have to put on tzitzis. But if I have a 4-corner garment, I must put on tzitzis. I must put on tchelet. Because there's a debate in the Talmud. Can you wear the white without the chelet? So most authorities say, yeah. So that's obviously what we've done throughout Jewish history. We wear the white strings without the blue string. And the Malachar said, no. Look in the Shema. What do you mean? So he wouldn't wear tzitzis. He never wore a tallis in his life. That's why I always tell nice young high school boys who sometimes don't want to wear tzitzis, they're playing who knows what. So if the Rosh Hashiva, taps them on the back, wear your tzitzis, just say, I follow the Baal HaMaor. And, maybe you can get away with it. I hope the Rosh Hashiva knows what you're talking about. I don't know if every Rosh Hashiva knows what this view of the Baal HaMaor. But the Baal HaMaor is a very fascinating character, and he was very sharp. And by the way, why is he called the Baal HaMaor? The master of light.
When did he live?
He lived in the 12th century Provence. By the way, it's an aside. We're working on it. Please God, we're doing a new trip. Please God, all should be well. This summer, we're going to go to Provence, the south of France. Provence was a fascinating area because it had, I always like to say, it had the strengths of Ashkenaz and Sfard. It's like in between Ashkenaz and Sfard. It had the intensity of Talmudic learning that they had in Germany and France, and it had the breadth of philosophy and other subjects they had in Spain combined. So Provence was like, I used to say, maybe it's not, so, I've been talking about baseball recently. My last two podcasts, I mentioned baseball. But I used to compare the Havdil, Provence, to the Dominican Republic. Because I remember as a kid, I don't mean in the 80s, I think there was 9 shortstops in Major League Baseball from the Dominican Republic. It's like this little 2-0. So there was something in the air in the Dominican Republic that they make great shortstops for Major League Baseball. So La Havdil, that's what Provence was. It was this little area, the Ravid, the Balamor, the Meiri, many great people, great Gedolei Israel lived in Provence. So the Balamor lived in Lunel. Who took French here?
Light.
What does Lunel mean?
Light.
Light. The Baal HaMaor. The Baal HaMaor from Lunel. That's why his commentary called him the. And he wrote in Moed. If you look, he wrote a comment. He's most famous for his commentary on the Rif. I wouldn't call it a commentary riff. I would call it an attack on the Rif. Okay. He's always, he respected it. Whenever you write, when the Ravid is criticizing the Rambam, it's because he has great respect for the Rambam, right? You only criticize a great person if you respect what they wrote. So I'm saying this, of course, the Ravid had great respect for the Rambam, but sometimes he says the Rambam's out of his mind. The Ravid would take the Korban Pesach, the Rambam, he said, I would throw it on the ground and step on it, because the Rambam says you can have Gid Hanash in the Korban Pesach, whatever. They use sharp language. So the Balamor and the Ravid, they learned with each other. They were Chevrusas in Provence. So the Balamor wrote an attack wherever he disagrees with the Rif. The Rif was considered the greatest authority for many years. And for many years in Jewish history, people learned the Rif. They didn't learn, there was no Shulchan Aruch. They learned, even when they learned the Rif, they didn't learn Talmud, because the Rif took away all the back and forth that's confusing to people, the questions, the tangent. He just tells you the basic stuff you got to know. So the Rif was very, very popular. So the Balamor wrote when the Rif is wrong. And the Ramban, who was always the great peacemaker of Judaism, the Ramban is Mr. Peace, and he's the one who tried to solve when they're burning the books of the Rambam. He said, you're right, but don't burn the books. Let's make peace here. So always, the Rambam always defends the people who get attacked. So the Rambam defends the Bahag against the attacks of the Rambam, and he defends the Rif against the attacks of the Balamor. So the Ramban's book is known Milchamat Hashem, the wars of God. He's fighting the war of God to defend the Rif from the attack of the Balamor. So, but in Moed, it's known as the Ma'or HaKatan. Look in the back of your Gemara by the Rif. And in the Zikin, it's known as HaMa'or HaGadol, the small light and the big light. I remember Rav Schechter telling us, because Moed is easier. You don't need so much light. So you need a little bit of light to illuminate the Gemara. Nezikin, Bava Kama, Bava Basra, Daf Yomi now, the middle of Bava Batra. Without Rashi, you can plutz there. The Rashbam can't stop. So you need the Ma'or HaGadol. You need great big light. Anyways, so the Balamor writes that when he grew up, I meant to double check it last night. I apologize. Please God for next week. I'll look it up inside. But Balamor writes when he grew up, they said Malchut, Zichronot, and Shofar, all 4 tefillot. Which makes a lot of sense. If the theme of Rosh Hashana is Malchut, Zichronot, and Shofar, well, we won't say it at Musaf. So no, we used to say it in every tefillah. I think most people are very happy. Can you understand? We said it at Mincha and Mariv, like davening would take a lot longer. The Chazar Shatz at Mincha and Shachrit would be much longer. I don't know that different PU team like we do, it'd be in davening an extra hour. So people are happy. We only say Malchut, Zichronot, and Shofar and Musaf. But the Balamor was of the opinion, which makes a lot of sense. You should say Malchut, Zichronot, and Shofar you say it at all 4 tefillot, Mariv, Shachrit, and Mincha. So this very well will fit in. Why do they have the remnant of Rabbi Yochanan and Nori? They used to say part of the Malchut. Rav Soloveitchik then pointed out something very, very beautiful, very powerful, that the Malchut of Rav Yochanan ben Nuri and Rabbi Akiva are very different. The Malchut of Rav Yochanan ben Nuri is like God is the king, like the sphere, Pachad, I just said. How do it? You should be in fear and trembling. You should, I can't even approach the king. Who am I? It's a very distant harsh judge. I mean, not judgment. God is judging us. And like you better be quaking in your feet and you better be crying. That's the Malchut of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nur. Rabbi Akiva, beautiful Malchut. God is the king. The king is such a nice king. He loves his subjects. And Al Kain the Kava, we're going to come close to God. Everybody's going to recognize you. We're going to fix the world. We're going to do beautiful things. So it's a very different. That's how the Rab points out. If you just look at the verses, it's a very different theme. And this, of course, is always true in all these things. What is our mood supposed to be like on Rosh Hashanah? So I know, like in beginning of the school year chat, so they came up in one of my classes already, Yom Kippur. So whatever Yom Kippur, is, everybody, many people. Yom Kippur is a sad day. We're fasting. It's not a happy. And I tell them, no, Yom Kippur is the happiest day of the year. So if you've never heard it before, you look at the guy's nuts. When it's the happiest day of the year, you're out of your mind. But okay. So what mood are we supposed to have? So there really is a debate what the mood is on Rosh Hashanah. And we don't say Hallel. The Rambam writes, Ein bo simcha yetera. We don't have excessive simcha, but we have simcha. There is a debate in the Talmud whether Rahman al-Islan, somebody who's sitting Shiva, does the Shiva end with Rosh Hashanah? We know it ends at Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Does it end Rosh Hashanah? So that's a debate. We today accept the view that it does end. And we today accept the view that you're not allowed to fast on Rosh Hashanah. But the Gaonim, Rav Chaim, I mentioned this, I think, recently, Rav Soloveitchik said his grandfather fasted on Rosh Hashanah. It's against the Shulchan Aruch, but there was the practice of the Gaonim. There were many Rishonim who felt, how are we going to eat on Rosh Hashanah? It's Yom Adin. Obviously, they ate it at night. They didn't fast like for 48 hours. They ate at night, but they couldn't. The Yom Adin only starts in the morning. There's no Yom Adin at night, which is why, by the way, interestingly enough, if you forget to say Hamelach Hakadosh, right? The theme of Rosh Hashanah is Malchiyot, and that's why the Balamor says you should always say Malchiyot. We don't do that. We say it in Musaf, and then we do say Malchiyot. We say Hamelach Hakadosh, not just on Rosh Hashanah, but during a Seret Yemei Tshuva, we change the El Hakadosh to Hamelach Hakadosh. Right? If I'm gonna to Hamelach Hakadosh. Rav Soloveitchik, because actually I have right now, I'm using the Machzor. I don't know if anybody has this. They put out a Machzor a number of years ago with the comments. Rav Soloveitchik didn't write it, of course, but they gathered together comments he made on the Machzor. And this was done by, what's his name, in New Jersey. I forget the scientist. What's the way he does a lot of the Reb's work. Now I forget his name.
Lustiger, Dr. Lustiger.
Lustiger. There you go. Yeah. He put it together. So here he has a comment on the bottom that the difference between Ha'el Kadosh and Hamelach, it's interesting. I didn't really think like this, but okay, that Ha'el is a distant God, a transcendent God, not really connected to man. And Melech, which is along the lines of what he's saying, Rabbi Akiva's Malchiyot, Melech is a much more involved God. He's our king. The king has subjects. He deals with the subject. El HaKadosh is God is like, in the heavens. And Melech HaKadosh is God is down here on earth. But what happens if you forget to say HaMelech HaKadosh? You have to repeat the Shmoneh Esrei, because that's the major theme. But what the mood should be, what the Malchut is, so that's a debate. And that was my, but we assume there is joy. But the Gemara says the Sifrei Torah, Sifrei Chaim v'Meitim Petuchim lefanecha. The book of life and death is open. You don't say Hallel. The Gemara says we really should say Hallel. Why don't we say Hallel Rosh Hashanah? It's a Yontif. We say Hallel every Yontif. That's a little too much. And the Rambam writes, Ein bo simcha yetera. Hallel, we're dancing. You're not supposed to say Hallel, right? When I go to shul and they say Hallel, I can't stand it. That's wrong. You have to sing Hallel. But most minyanim, obviously, you go to minyan at 7:00 in the morning, and wherever you're going to work, whoever sings Hallel. So Baruch Hashem, I daven at chat every morning. So it's school. So we daven a few minutes earlier, Rosh Hashanah, and then we sing Hallel. That's how you have to sing Hallel. So if you mumble Hallel, you can say it on Rosh Hashanah too, I guess. But if you say Hallel as you're supposed to say Hallel, to sing it, so that's Simcha Yetera. We cannot do that on Rosh Hashanah. But so that's this sort of conflicting mood, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri focuses on the harshness of God's divine divinity of Malchut. Rabbi Akiva focuses on the warmth and the beauty, which, of course, knowing what we know about Rabbi Akiva, etc., that makes a lot of sense. That Rabbi Akiva we'd have. I don't know so much about Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri to know what his sort of other views were. Okay. All right, so let's go on. We got up to Kadosh Ata V'Rosh Shemecha. So last year, if you want to listen, I mean, anyway, you can go back. It's all recorded. Just let me get a drink for a second. Hold on. Sorry.
Kelman,
Mm-hmm.
if you forget a Melech HaKodesh and Mariv, do you have to repeat?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So that's what I'm going to say. So that's the Chiddush. What happens if you forget HaMelech HaKadosh at Mariv? So I'm sure most people know that if you forget Yala v'Yavo at Mariv, you don't have to repeat the Shemona Esrei. Mekachim et HaChodesh be'erev. They didn't say, the moon was sanctified only in the day. Retroactively, it became Rosh Chodesh, which was, by the way, that's why there are 2 days Rosh Hashana, even in Israel. Yeah, you have to realize how weird it was. People, in the time of the Mishnah, it came the 30th of Elul, like the 30th day of Elul. Now, the 30th day of Elul, we don't have our calendar doesn't have a 30th Elul. Our calendar, Elul, only has 29 days, and day 30 is the first of Tishrei. But when we didn't have a fixed calendar, that changed from year to year. The Gemara said it was rare, it was always, but that's not relevant. So it came the 30th of Elul, and it might be Rosh Hashanah. So you go to shul at night, and you go, I don't know when that tune was invented, but and Baruch Hu, when you come home and you eat apple and honey, I don't know if they had apple and honey in the time of Mishnah either. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I need some scholars here to tell me when exactly those minhagim began, but some of them are mentioned in the Gemara, actually, so they are quite ancient. But you didn't know if witnesses were going to come tomorrow. And if witnesses didn't come, guess what? We're going to do it all over again. We know in advance we're having 2 days yontif, so it's okay. But can you imagine not knowing? And then, okay, I mean, again, the whole it's amazing. They didn't know if it would be Rosh Hashanah until later in the day. And then if witnesses come, we were right, it was Rosh Hashanah. So, and then if it wasn't Rosh Hashanah, the Mishnah says, okay, they shouldn't start doing work because they only accepted the witnesses till like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The Mishnah has the whole thing. There was they came, they got mixed up. So they made a rule, they only accept witnesses till the middle of the afternoon when there was a Beit HaMikdash standing. Okay, so then do it again. But you didn't know when Rosh Hashanah was going to be. Like, it's very funny. It was Rosh Hashanah retroactively. And so eventually, of course, people didn't know. I mean, if you've unless you lived within earshot of the temple, you wouldn't know if they sanctified the new moon that day. So you always had to keep 2 days. And of course, the custom developed to keep 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, of course, even in Israel, as we all know. But anyway, so what if you forget at night? So night is not, because the Beit Din only accepts testimony in the daytime. So the halakha is, the practical notion, and therefore I'm very good at this. So I say, I forget Yalav Yavo at Mariv like I did last week. I was good this year. Both on Tuesday and Wednesday night, right? Rosh Chodesh was Wednesday, Thursday, right? But no, Rosh Chodesh was on Tuesday, Wednesday. So both Monday and Tuesday night, Baruch Hashem, this year, I forgot Yalav Yavo at Mariv. It's amazing. It's amazing. I almost never, like once in 10 years, I forget Yalav Yavo at Shachrit. Somehow, it's a terrible thing, but somehow, I guess it's psychological in the back of my mind. So I forget Yalav Yavo. I don't always forget Yalav Yavo Mariv, I'd say, but it's amazing. But it doesn't matter because you don't have to repeat the Shemona Esrei because they didn't sanctify the moon. So the Rav quoted, I forget who, the Chayei Adam quotes the Rav in Vilna. I forget the name. I have to look it up. Some Paslevers, I forget now the name. Somebody, some Dayan said, a Chiddush. If you forget HaMelech HaKadosh at Mariv, at the first Rosh Hashanah, you don't have to repeat the Shemona Esrei, because they didn't sanctify the new moon. It's really only in the daytime, just like on Rosh Chodesh. And Rav Soloveitchik gave a whole shir why that's totally wrong. Absolutely not. If you forget HaMelech, it has nothing to do with Yalav Yavo. It has to do with the whole essence of the day. You blew it. In other words, everything. I don't remember the Rabbi gave a whole shir. No, even if you forget HaMelech HaKadosh at Mariv on the first night, you have to repeat the Shemona Esrei. Now, by the way, when you repeat the Shemona Esrei, if that really happens to you, you don't have to say B'chein Tein Pachtecha again. That's this additional introduction to Malchut of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. That you don't have to say again. It's like if you forget Musaf again, or what you have to daven. You don't have to say, oh, well, we don't do it in San Shmon Esrei. But let's say, I don't know, someone comes up, the Chazan repeats. You don't have to repeat all the stuff, right? And you know the famous story when Rosh Hashanah this year, when Rosh Hashanah is on a Friday, right? When they asked Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, Mark's been giving classes on the Muslim movement, and Rabbi Yisrael Salanter had like an ethical sensitivity that it's hard to imagine. Really, the stories they tell are legendary, and it was unbelievable. His thinking, the most important thing about Yom Kippur is when you go to shul, don't step on somebody's toes when you come late. The most important part about baking matzah is to make sure the people who carry the water pails are not too heavy. Like that was the most important. They didn't worry about the things we all worried about. The kashrut of the matzah depends on how heavy the water that you made the woman who was working in the factory, because she's very poor and she needs the money, and how often, how heavy you made the water. That's what makes the matzah kosher. So they asked Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, new yontifs on Thursday, Friday. So it's a long davening on Rosh Hashanah. All these piyutim that they didn't have in the time of the Mishnah, all these piyutim. I cook for Shabbos. What are we going to do? So Rav Yisrael Salanter beautifully, famously said, "Okay, you can cut out an Netana Tokef." The later edition cut out in the boots. So what's so important to Netana Tokef? I mean, Netana Tokef, that's like, for some people, that's, if you don't say Netana Tokef, it's like Yehereg V'al Yavor. You can cut out Netana Tokef, you don't cut. But what are you not allowed to cut out? When the chazan stops, that God forbid you can cut it out. The chazan needs a break, and I can tell you, for the last number of years, I daven shachrit. Believe me, you need that break. You need that break. So that you cannot cut out, but unetana tokef you can cut out. So that's a beautiful. Put things in perspective.
You need the same break for Musaf too.
Yeah, of course, obviously. Yeah. So he's saying, cut out the Tanatoke, but don't cut out the 3 seconds, the humming. That is very important. And sometimes, if the people don't sing, you got to, and anyway, so that's it's also beautiful. It adds to the whole mood. But of course, I mean, I don't know of any shul that cuts out the Tanatoke on Friday, but it's the concept he was saying. And anyways, okay. So let's
get the bottom line.
What is the bottom line? No, you have to repeat the Shmon Esrei. I'm following what Rav Soloveitchik said. If you forget HaMelech HaKadosh at Mariv, we're going to follow Rav Soloveitchik. You should repeat the Shmon Esrei, but you can skip. That's not the essence of Shmon Esrei. That's an add-on, so you don't have to say that. That's what I'm saying. If you forget. I don't know. If you forget the word to malamed lenosh bina, you don't have to repeat the Shmon Esrei. You don't have to repeat the Shmon Esrei if you forget something integral. So Yala v'Yavo on Rosh Chodesh is considered integral. The Tein Talumatar, that we have rain, is so integral, even though it's 4 words, or Mashi Baruch, or Hageshem, 4 words, you have to repeat the Shmon Esrei, because that's so important to the Shmon Esrei. It's as if you almost didn't daven. But if you say Refeinu Hashem and you don't say V'nei Refeinu Hashem, or you don't say Ki Tilatenu, it's a big deal. I mean, you should say it, but you don't have to repeat the Shmon Esrei. As long as you say the theme of each bracha, you're okay with that. But HaMelech HaKadosh, that's not Rosh Hashanah. If you don't say HaMelech HaKadosh, it's like you haven't davened on Rosh Hashanah. Shachrit, Mincha, and Mariv. It doesn't matter. Okay, so let's discuss now.
What about the Sesame Tshuva at Mariv? If you miss HaMelech HaKadosh.
Same thing. You have to repeat the same thing. By the way, if you forget Yalla v'Yavo on Chol HaMoed, Mariv, you also have to repeat the Shmon Esrei. It's ein mekachim et HaChodesh Be'erev. They don't sanctify the new moon at night, so therefore you have to. You don't have to repeat the Shmon Esrei. On Chol HaMoed, it has nothing to do with the sanctification of the new moon. So if on Chol HaMoed, Sukkos, you forget Yalla v'Yavo, what Mariv, you must repeat Mariv. That's maybe people are not so aware of that. It has nothing to do with the fact that Mariv is a reshut, right? We know halakhically speaking, Mariv is just a custom. It's optional. It's optional, like Shiva Sarvatamas today is optional. It's not practically optional. I mean, I guess it sort of is. That's why there's no repetition of the Yami. That's less important. I mean, Mariv is less important. It's optional. So some people think the reason you don't have to repeat Shmon Esrei and Mariv. No, I didn't have to daven in the first place. So I daven, it's good enough. I don't have to say it again. So that Tosfos saying, We don't say that. Again, a beautiful and important idea. We don't say it's true. Maybe you don't have to daven Mariv, but if you're going to daven Mariv, you have to daven properly. You don't have to daven. Don't do it. Don't volunteer. But if you're going to volunteer, do it properly, right? That's why Gadolam Mitzuvosa, one who's obligatory to do something, is either on a higher level than volunteer. Because a volunteer, what do you want from me? I don't want to volunteer today. What do you volunteer? If you have a job, I don't want to show up today. But volunteers do that all the time. What are you going to get? They work 20 hours a week and they decide they don't want to work 25 hours. Can't be upset at them. They're doing wonderful things. But if they had a job, they would come in every day. So that's what the Talmud says. It's greater to be someone who's obligated to do something than a volunteer, because no matter how committed a volunteer is, when it's 25 below zero, you don't volunteer as much. It's just the way it is. So you don't have to volunteer, but if you're going to volunteer, do it probably. You don't have to daven Mariv in theory, but if you're going to daven Mariv, make sure you say Yelav. So the reason is not because Mariv is less important, which it is less important. It's because they didn't sanctify the new moon at night. Okay, let's see if we can get at least part of Kadosh Atav and Rosh Shemecha. That's where we got up to. We're at the end. You should please next week, whatever you don't have a Machzor in front of you, good to bring. Kadosh Atav and Rosh Shemecha vein Eloha milvaladecha. Kakatu vayigva Hashem tzevot v'mishvat ve'el Kadosh nikdash b'tzedakah. God, you are holy and awesome. Kadosh Atav and Rosh. Now, it's interesting. I now somebody tell me in English. Right, the way I said that now, God, you're holy and awesome. The way I explained it meant what great. He's like an awesome quarterback. He's like amazing. He's awesome. So, but I don't think that's what awesome means here. Awesome means he's like inspired, like he inspires like trepidation. Not quite the pachad as we said, but awe. Like not awesome, but anyways, kadosh atav v'nara shemecha. So it's interesting. God Himself is holy. What, by the way, very simply, what does holiness mean in Judaism? What does it mean to be holy? Separate, distinct, right? Everything that's holy is distinct. Shabbos, the Jewish people, Eretz Yisrael, and of course, everything that's holy has a mitzvah associated with it. The way we demonstrate our distinctiveness is through a mitzvah. So anything that is kadosh have to have a separate mitzvah. So Kohanim are special kedushas, they're extra mitzvot by Kohanim. Obviously, the Jewish people are holy compared to the nation of the world, so we have extra mitzvot. Shabbat is holy, extra mitzvot. The land of Israel is holy. Everything that's holy has extra mitzvot, but it's separate and distinct. God is the most distinct, but it's His name. His name is awesome. Just mentioning God's name, v'nara shemecha. We're not allowed to mention God's name. Lo tisad shema shemokecha lashav. I mean, you can mention it when you're learning Torah. You can mention it when you daven. And of course, we don't really mention God's name at all. I mean, this was very much for Yom Kippur, right? What's it? The Tetragrammaton, is that how you pronounce it, right? The actual name of God. The Yud Kei Vav Kei, that's not God. That's not God's name. It's like a moniker we use for God. Hashem, Hashem. But in the temple, the Kohen would call out, Shem HaMeforish, he would say the Shem HaMeforish, he would say the actual name, 72-letter name of God. Golam Noflim Al Pneim. It was so awesome. God's name is so awe-inspiring. So we have to fall to the earth. Baruch Shem Kavod. God, your name, Baruch Shem, right? We just said God's name, Baruch Shem Kvod Malchuto Olam Ved. That's what we do, and of course we replay that on Yom Kippur. We don't say God's name, but we say sort of our version of God's name. But as we know, the custom is it's only a custom. I mean, I guess important. It's not to bow down. It's to pretend we're sort of in the Beit Hamikdash. So Kadosh Atav and Rosh Shemecha ve'ein Eloha milvaladecha. It doesn't mean, which we do say sometimes, there are no other gods like you. I've always, that phrase, which we have, sort of a little bit of a troublesome phrase, God is the greatest of all the gods. But we'll leave, but there's no other God but you. Kakatuv, right? God, Shem God should be lifted. God, you're the God of hosts, right? Whatever, Mishpat, in justice, V'ha'el HaKadosh, the God, the holy God is sanctified through tzedakah. Anybody know where that pasuk comes from? That's a pasuk, Kakatuv. It's not part of the 10 psukim in Malchut, right? You say Kadosh Ata v'Narashmecha kakatuv as it's written. That's when I daven. It has I think it's a beautiful. It's sort of the tunes that have to reflect the mood. I didn't do that right, but my voice. Anyways, where does that pasuk come from? Oh, so let me show you. I'm sorry.
Yeshayahu.
Okay, good. Was that cheating or you knew? No, you don't have to answer that question. Okay, but I'll tell you a little secret. I cheated. I was looking at it last night, and interestingly enough, in the Rav's Machzor, I don't know why. Like our school would always have. It doesn't say. You would think in the English they would write where the verse from. The Rav's Machzor doesn't say it, and I Taka didn't know either. So don't feel bad, or maybe you should get a new teacher. I don't know, but I didn't know where the pasuk was either. So here it is. It's in Yeshayahu, Perek 5. Right before we talk about the lowliness of man, Vayishpal Ish, we lower man, we bring him low. Veineg Voim, the arrogant should be, put down, right? The arrogant, but God, we put down man, but we lift up God. Vayikba Hashem tzvaot b'mishpat. Yisha is a very difficult book, but anyway, so this is where it comes from. It's a verse in Yeshayahu. Now you'll notice right away, Mishpat and Staka is a very Yeshayahu theme. We know it from Perek Aleph, the first chapter in Yeshayahu, where Tzion b'mishpat tifadeh v'shaveh b'tzedakah. That Staka u'mishpat is the way we get redemption to the land of Israel, the way we return, right? That's what we read on the Shabbat, on the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av. So here also you have these themes of Mishpat and Staka. And of course, where else do you have the themes of Mishpat and Staka? I guess I didn't prepare it, but I'll do that now. Where else do you have the theme of Staka and Mishpat? The original Staka and Mishpat. All right, why did this not work? Bereshit. Okay, Sefaria. I'm sorry.
Abraham?
Right, Avram. I believe it's chapter 19, verse 18. If I'm not mistaken. It's either 18:19 or 19:18. I think it's 19:18.
Before the discussion of Sdom.
No, it's got to be 18, 19. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Let's find it in 1 second.
Here.
Okay, right there it is, right there. I'll do it English, Hebrew. Okay. So God says he's about to destroy Sdom. It's Yom Hadin for Sdom. Actually, it's interesting, right? It's Yom Hadin. And Avram's arguing. Avram's davening to God, don't destroy Sdom. And so God before he does the Yom Hadin, he lets us know it's a Yom Hadin. If God judges and we don't know, that's hard. We can't prepare. So God says, am I going to hide from Abraham what I'm going to do? That's not right. He's going to be a great person, a great nation. What will make Avram great? Why is Avram great? Why am I picking him? Because he's going to command his house. Okay, he's going to command his house. V'shamru derech Hashem. They'll follow the path of God. To do tzedakah umishpat. That's the path of the Jew. It's the path of God. It's how God is elevated. So it begins with Abraham, and then of course Yeshua is picking up on this, and then that's what the Machzor. I see it's already late, so we'll pick up next week. Who are we talking about here? God or the Jewish people? And obviously the fact that I asked the question means they're going to have different commentaries. They're going to explain it a little bit differently. Are we talking about that we elevate God through tzedakah mishpat, or God elevates himself? God does tzedakah mishpat, or we do tzedakah mishpat? What's it talking about? You see, just to think about, that's what, please God, we can pick up with next week. And as I did mention, I hope everybody's okay. We'll go back to our regular 9:15 time next week, please God. And if anybody has a problem with time, just let me know. But let's just do a quick review, and then I'll take any questions you might have. So we talked why Rosh Hashana is a holiday. And the reason that most people give, because that's what we were taught in kindergarten and in grade 1 and in grade 2 and in grade 3 and in grade 4 and grade 5 and grade 6 and grade 7 and grade 8. And that's what every rabbi says in Rosh Hashanah, because today's the creation of the world. And that's what it says in the Machzor. Said that's not simple at all. First of all, it's not mentioned at all in the Torah. There's no hint at all that to the Torah. And we said that's a debate between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shua when the world was created, which you said is debate makes no sense. Obviously, it's a symbolic debate. Are we first Jews or are we first human beings, right? The world's created, in theory, we're first human, then we add Nisan. Or no, we start in Nisan, the primary role to be a Jew. And that's the debate, and we seem to follow it is Tishrei. Yes, we do Birchas Hakama in Nisan, but okay. So that was the debate, and we saw what happened on Nisan Tishrei. So if it's not the creation of the world, so we didn't discuss it. So why do we focus on that so much? Okay, that we can do another time on Tshuva. But if it's not creation, where we say because it's the 7th month, the 7 being holy, 7 is a special number. So Rosh Hashanah is announcing Yom Kippur and Sukkot as our coming. Before a special guest comes in, Yom Kippur, the day we come close call, we make an announcement. We prepare. So Rosh Hashanah, we begin preparing. For it's a Seret Yemei Tshuva, we're preparing for Rosh Hashanah. So that's really what Rosh Hashanah is, and it's Rosh Chodesh of the 7th month, which is why Masechet Rosh Hashanah talks about sanctifying the new month. Okay, and then we discussed a little bit. We discussed Ubechein, these 4 additional paragraphs, which we said are the Malchiot of Rav Yochanan ben Nuri. They're the Malchiot, which is these harsher Malchiot, as opposed to Rabbi Akiva's more beloved Malchiot, and Rav Yochanan ben Nuri felt you should say Malchiot with the 3rd bracha of Hamelech HaKadosh, because you only have 9 brachot because of Chana, and we don't really follow that opinion. We follow Rabbi Akiva, that we combine it in the middle, but we have this remnant, and we mentioned the Baal HaMor says on all of the tefillot, they said Malchiot, Zichronot, and Shofarot, and then we just began to discuss. So we discussed Ubechein, approaching the king, and how do we approach the king with trepidation? That's the more Rav Yochanan ben Nuri, as opposed to the loving king of Rabbi Akiva. And then we started the bracha Kadosh Atav and Arash Shemecha, and we're sort of left off on Stakal Mishpat. Okay, let me just take any questions. Thank you very much.
I have a comment, if I may.
Of course you may.
Thank you. When you were talking about God is the greatest of all the gods, right? And that
God is
doesn't
what?
sit well, right? The greatest of all the gods.
Right.
Right. So Norman Lamb, I think in reference to the verse Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, writes that in this culture, people, we don't have Avodah Zarah so much. It doesn't sit right. Yeah, I know you have that book.
Thank you very much. I have this book. Thank you very much.
Yes, I know you do. And I'm glad to see you remember. And what he writes is that God is your number one priority, because people can turn all kinds of things into Avodah Zarah. Something else is more important in your life than God. No, God is number one.
Right.
So he suggests that as a more appropriate interpretation, fitting the culture that we live in.
Okay. So the many gods refer to the gods we make. Taylor Swift is like a god, right? And maybe she'll win the election. We can't.
Right,
I have to mention something. I have to mention something.
Something that I was guilty of myself. I have to do my job so well that I'll skip a little davening today or a lot of davening today because I want to prepare more.
Yeah, that's the famous thing. All those modern rabbis think that. Don't worry if Christianity's Avodah Zarah. Worry if money's Avodah Zarah. Don't worry about Buddhism and Hinduism and Christianity. Okay, we'll figure that one out. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Yes, thank you, and thank you for the book, of course. Okay. Morris is asking why don't we follow what Nehemiah? That's what we do really. Nehemiah says the people go out and they were so ignorant, they didn't know. They gathered together, and that's where Rosh Hashanah really the only time it's mentioned in Tanakh. Ezra and Nehemiah, the Jews, the lower level Jew. I don't know what the word is. The Chashava people stayed in Babel. The Mamzerim. That's what it says in the Mishnah. The Mamzerim, the Shtuki, the people with no yichis, the poor people, they all went back to Israel. So they were intermarried, assimilated. So they come together and they says, go home and rejoice. It's a happy day. Go make shtu mashmanim, whatever. Eat achlu mashmanim and eat. So that taka is what we do. But still, first of all, he's talking to people, so that's right. So I don't know that's a total halakhic source, but in a certain sense, we actually do follow that. That we do in practice believe that you have to have a nice meal in Rosh Hashanah. We do celebrate it. It is a yontiv. So we are following. That's chapter 8 in the Chemya. Let's see. Did anything else I missed? No. Yisrael is not mentioned in the prayer of Parnas. Okay, that's somebody working privately. That's basically pray for rain. It would not make sense to pray for rain to follow only Jewish-owned labs. Okay, fine. I think it's a great idea to study the greats of the Middle Ages. Okay, also privately. Is there a book in English that has it? That's a good question. I think Art Scroll did put out a couple books to be shown. I can't vouch for what it's going to give you. I mean, there are academic books and what people will put out. Is there a book that gives you a summary of the great medieval people, sort of brief summary? I don't know. I have to think offhand. Nothing is coming to my mind. I'm trying to think of the books I've read that are fascinating. I mean, they have, you can read articles like Yisrael Tashma, the article on the Rosh and the article on different people. But I know it's a good question. I don't really know. Okay, that's it. Okay. Any other comments? Thank you very much.
I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
Okay, I wasn't sure I followed the Malchuyot for Ben Nuri and Rabbi Akiva. You're saying that I knew that the other stuff was from Ben Nuri, but Ben Nuri must have also been saying that there's still a blessing for Malchuyot later on.
Right. His breast, when we say Hamelach HaKadosh, I don't know if that's a good question. Did he say Hamelach HaKadosh or did he say Melach HaKol Haaretz, whatever? But the bracha of Hamelach HaKadosh is his Malchuyot. That's where we say Malchuyot. That's what Hamelach HaKadosh means. He said Malchuyot earlier in the Shmon Esrei, in the third bracha.
So what did he say then for the other one?
No, so the other one he combined Kiddushan Hayom and he didn't have to combine.
Did he not have the right number of blessings?
No, he did because Malchuyot didn't have its own blessing. Malchuyot was combined with the third bracha, so you only had that Zichronot and Shofarot. When you said three brachot, you've already said Malchuyot. In the middle section, you just say Zichronot and Shofarot and Kiddushan Hayom. Second day, that's 3 more, and then you have 3 at the end. So he just put Malchuyot in part of the first 3. So you still have 9 brachot. What we do is we do the first 3, then we do Malchuyot and the sanctity of the day as 1, Kiddushan Hayom. So Rav Yochanan ben Nuri just did Malchuyot, not the sanctity of the day, the sanctity of the name. We have Kiddushan Hashem, Ha'el HaKadosh, HaMelech HaKadosh, and then we have Kiddushan Hayom, which is Mekadesh Yisrael Hazmanim, normally. So the question is, which one do you combine Malchuyot with? That was the question.
Okay.
So Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri combines it earlier, and that's why we say before we say the bracha of Hamelach HaKadosh. So that's not our practice, and we say Malchuyot, but that's what the Rav's uncle was apparently saying, that this is remnant of the up north in the Galil. They followed the practice of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Okay.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. When we should ready, Shabbat Shalom. David, you got to get ready. You have to go to shul soon, no? When shul in Beit Shemesh?
I daven mincha already, but yeah.
You daven mincha already. Thank you. Okay, nice to see you. Paul as well. We should hear good news.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you very much.
What can I say? Okay, be well. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thank you very much. And okay, have a nice Shabbat, and we should hear good news. Thank you.
Amen.
Shabbat Shalom.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Good Shabbos.
Okay.